Well, yeah, and reading your work, which is phenomenal, and I definitely like. We don't generally plug books on here, but I would definitely recommend your book to everyone to read. But just even like your experiences going to different countries in the world, and in fact, this is a bit of a pre-pandemic question because none of us are traveling right now. But I'm just curious to know how washroom access is in Canada compared to the rest of the world, and even and within Canada, are there differences within provinces?
Yeah, there's a little bit of difference. So the way I always explain toilet access in Canada is to say that in Canada, we have a real strong culture of publicly accessible toilets. So I talked about that before. There's public toilets on street, free, available for everybody. We just expect it. And then there's the publicly accessible toilets, which are customer toilets. And we really have, as a culture, we've grown to rely on those publicly accessible toilets. We all know we will go to Tim Hortons or Starbucks or wherever we go, malls, and we in other countries like the UK would be a familiar example perhaps to people as they're in Victorian era England, for example, there was a really strong push to provide hygiene services for people. And so we saw a lot of subterranean toilets going in, and that became cemented as this important thing that was important for commuters and important for people to use urban areas. We never got that in Canada, and I think it's because we had a smaller population, and there were a few of those in Toronto, but they really didn't catch on. And so I think as a culture, it just became the norm for us to rely on bathrooms in restaurants and cafes. And the problem with that, as I'm sure everybody on the webinar knows, is then you're actually relying on somebody else to grant you access, and that doesn't always happen. And that's the big problem, is people need access and they can't get it. And even the idea that you need to ask for access is in itself, I would argue, problematic. This is a basic thing. We don't ask for permission to walk down sidewalks.
And you know, one of the things that I was really impressed when I was reading your work is the work that you focused on vulnerable populations. And I think it dovetails a little bit into the short presentation I had about inequities within healthcare that lead to different outcomes, even in the COVID world. And I just want to get a sense from you, your experiences. You know, for example, my eyes were open when I was reading about your writing around homeless people and their access issues, and so that compared to different people, and just give a sense of how difficult is it for different groups?
Yeah. So there are social determinants that affect people's access. And whenever I do a talk, usually I will go through my personal, what I call toilet privilege. So I say, you know, I'm not a caregiver anymore for children or anybody elderly. I only worry about my own needs. I'm cisgendered, so we know that trans people face verbal harassment and sometimes physical violence for using bathrooms that match their gender identity. I don't have IBD, so I don't have frequent and urgent need, and that varies, that I have to sort of stick handle. I am white, and we know that people who are Black, for example, since you know this is something that really deserves attention. I hope it gets attention right now. Is in 2018, 2 men in Philadelphia, as one example, were arrested inside a Starbucks. They were waiting for a third man who was a business partner for a meeting, and they tried to use the bathroom and they were arrested. And so that use of public space is curtailed that way. I don't use mobility device, so I don't ever have to worry if my wheelchair or any other device I might use is going to fit in a bathroom. I'm middle class, which is, I always try to make clear that what I mean by that is two things. One is if I have to buy a muffin to use a bathroom, that's no sweat. I can buy that muffin. But the irony of it is, because I am middle class, I don't have to buy the muffin because I can talk my way in. I have that social currency that can get me in. And I'm also housed. You brought us people who are experiencing homelessness have significant and often profound lack of access to bathrooms. And there's a whole range of problems with that. But I always think about very, very basic public health issues like San Diego is dealing with an ongoing hepatitis A outbreak, and it's linked to open defecation because there are not enough public bathrooms for people to use. And then finally, I'm a woman, which is not a privilege point when it comes to bathrooms, and everybody has seen the lines, but I won't hammer that home too much.
You know, and Emma, I mean, it was really interesting to hear everything that you had, the experience. I'm just curious, listening to Leslie, who, you know, it's coming out not necessarily from an IBD perspective. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on Leslie's comments and how that integrates with the work you've done with the Go Here program?
Thanks for all that you've taught me today, Leslie. I feel like my eyes have been opened because sometimes I can kind of see on a narrow track, like I have IBD, I have issues, I need to go to the washroom all the time sometimes. And sometimes I forget how broad the issue is, and that it doesn't just affect me, it affects so many others, and that we all need to use the washroom, and it's something that affects all of us. And so it's important to be reminded that of that. And I think the point you brought up about like the public washrooms is interesting to me, because I know in my province there is some like municipality washrooms that are kind of like that idea, but once again, with everything going on, those are closed. So it's interesting to learn about how some places use kind of that style, and how that would be really interesting and really helpful, because then you don't have to ask anyone, can I use the bathroom? You just go in and come out. And so, yeah, it's interesting to learn. Thanks.
You have to admit, one of my first kind of ideas of this whole potential for Go Here, actually, and I'm not dating, I'm like 45, but I watched Seinfeld, and George Costanza actually had created this toilet find app, and that got him really rich and stuff like that. So it's like, so that was some of my earliest experiences with toilet access through Seinfeld. Emma, you might not have been old enough to have seen Seinfeld and get that reference, but others in the panel.